Hey there, welcome back to the FB podcast. Today we're just gonna sort of bounce about, talk about this and that. Nothing really too specific. I think we'll start off. We're gonna do some sort of predictions for the end of the Premier League season. I know we've already done our full predictions at the start of the year, but just some sort of updated predictions. Talk about top four relegation. We'll do Champions League, Europa League, and Conference League winners, and then we'll just have a touch on maybe transfers and things at the end.
Yeah,
So
we're halfway through the season, so um, yeah, get some revised predictions in and what we're expecting
yeah,
for the
as
rest of
the
the season.
leading Shropshire pundit, you should have a lot to talk about.
I'm not just the leading Shropshire pundit, mate.
Did you make
I'm
a
the,
short of that yet?
I'm the leading pundit in the world. Yeah, I did, yeah.
Oh,
It's got some views, actually.
I need to have a look. I haven't checked. Um, right,
I
yeah.
mean,
So
don't
yeah,
too much. You know my editing skills are pretty...
yeah. Well, my editing skills aren't great. I literally just cut bits out and go, "Yep, that's the video,"
Yeah, me too, honestly.
or like copy a bit and stick it at the start, like when I played the drums.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I should just make that drum solo the intro for every episode.
Yeah, that's a good idea, actually.
Yeah.
It's a funny clip, yeah. Do it.
So yeah. Anyway, let's get into it. Top four title winners. Let's go title winners first. We in our Christmas catch-up episode we did touch on the idea that Liverpool are the best team.
I mean, yeah, top of the league, aren't they? So
Yeah.
you've got to talk about them.
Obviously, City, if they win that game in hand, that puts them. What is it? It's only what, a point
I
behind
think,
Liverpool, is it?
yeah, something like
Oh, sorry, no,
that.
it's 2 points behind Liverpool if they win that game in hand.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So yeah, City are within touching distance. They've got a game in hand. I mean, Villa are in touching distance, so Arsenal are as well. Liverpool obviously are top of the league. They've looked good. They've arguably looked the best team in the league thus far, but they've not looked infallible. Like they've not looked unbeatable. They've not
yeah,
looked as strong as title contenders have. So it's whether they can sustain what they've been doing.
I suppose
Did
the
you
big
watch?
news is that result against Arsenal, isn't it?
You mean last night or in the league?
Oh, last night, like just as like a talking point, like the
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was
narrative.
going to say, yeah, obviously it's FA Cup, so it doesn't have any direct relevance to the league. But both teams played pretty much first 11s.
Yeah,
Uh,
Arsenal dropped Raya, they dropped Zinchenko, they
Zinchenko,
dropped
I think they
Martinelli,
played Reece Nelson, yeah, and
played Havertz up top.
yeah,
So
but still
again, I
very
mean Liverpool rotated as well. There was no Salah, um, there was no
yeah. Salah's gone to
Szoboszlai.
Afcon,
Yeah,
and their defense is just really depleted. They played Joe Gomez at left back because both the left backs are injured at the moment.
but he's playing really well at the moment. He's kind of
He is, yeah,
popped
yeah.
up again. We all kind of wrote him off last year, and
Yeah, well,
he's
it's
just
tough when a
left.
player has a big injury like that. I think he was one of them where he just took him a long time to get back after his injury and stuff. But yeah, he looks really good. He had just dealt with Saka really well on the left hand side.
Yeah, I think
And
Arsenal
yeah,
were generally the more dominant side still, but you'd probably expect that at home. It's just when it comes to being clinical and having that sort of final piece of the puzzle to score the goal, that's
yeah. Well,
where
that's the thing.
Arsenal
They
continue to
created
struggle.
plenty.
Yeah,
Um, they were on, especially first half. They were on top for sure. They created plenty. But that's kind of been the story of Arsenal for the last few weeks. They said at the end of the game they showed a stat which was in I think in the last 5 games they'd scored one goal from 6 point something xg, which is just crazy.
yeah,
There's always talk about Arsenal needing an out and out striker and stuff, but it's not like they don't have the quality in the team to score goals regardless.
yeah. I mean, Nketiah's not a bad finisher. Jesus isn't a bad finisher. It's
Yeah,
just the system doesn't necessarily, lend itself to creating opportunities for those kinds of forwards. It
yeah. I don't know. What do you think it's? Do you think it's a problem with the system, or do you think it's kind of a period of bad luck and low confidence? Because looking at the chances last night, it's hard to say the system wasn't working because they created, chances that they just
I
should have
think,
scored.
yeah, it's probably about 1.67 XG, I think it was. But I mean
Yeah,
it more in the sense that it's not necessarily the XG that's created. It's more they're having this system where they've got so much of the ball, they're so high up the pitch, they're always playing against low blocks. And the thing is, Gabby Jesus and Nketiah, they're not really like false nines that are going to be. I know Jesus can play that kind of role, but I think really he wants to be on the last man, getting tap-ins at the back post, that sort of thing. But his role in that Arsenal side, he comes back into the midfield at times, and he's this kind of little pit bull, runs around. He's not necessarily focused on getting goal-scoring opportunities as much, um, and especially when they're in that deep block, he hasn't got the space to do that, even if he's not focused on other things at the time. So it just kind of makes you think: how do you break down a deep block, or how do you find someone who's going to take advantage of opportunities, or that sort of thing? And I think when you say that, you're really looking at someone like Haaland, obviously. And I know it's easy to say, oh well, if you want to score goals, you go get Haaland. But obviously he's got a completely different skill set to most strikers. He's this rapid, huge, monstrous striker that if you're struggling to break someone down and you chip a ball into the box, normally, right, you're thinking a defensive side like maybe Brentford or Wolves or whatever, they're just going to continuously head those out all game. You're going to struggle, especially when you've got someone like Jesus there. Not that he can't win a header or anything, but he's no Erling Haaland. So I think having that kind of big, powerful striker in a team that often has a defensive side penned in their own box is kind of the way through at times. Obviously, you can still win, and that they show that by continuing to win. Um, but the more dominant that you are, and the more people are worried about you, the more you kind of have to force your way through. So I think that's what they're looking at, and we've seen that kind of narrative when being linked with players like Ivan Toney, who's great in the air, great in a congested box. Um, I mean, we've seen in games against City, he's just so good at holding the ball up, so good at winning aerial duels that he just caused them so many problems because, normally when teams are pumping the ball up against City, you've got Diaz, Stones, Rodri there to just win it. But because he's there with such a high success rate winning that ball, that's what causes them problems. And it would be the same in a low block. So yeah, if they're going for players like Vlahovic, going for players like Tony, even
yeah,
someone like
linked
a
with
Tammy
Watkins as
Abraham.
well.
Yeah, well, I think Watkins is decent in the air, but I think the reason he works so well for us is because we are able to get him involved on the transition a lot, and he doesn't necessarily have to drop in as much to hassle midfielders or get involved in build-up play, and he's given more license to run in behind, and he's just so efficient at the moment when he's running in behind, turning it into a chance to score a goal essentially, or putting another teammate in. That's the reason we're able to get so much out of him. I think if we were permanently in low block situations and maybe Ollie was a little bit slower, um, and kind of otherwise the same player, we wouldn't be as successful at getting him involved in goals and things
Yeah,
as
well, I
well.
mean, Villa have kind of encountered a similar problem sometimes coming up against low blocks because expectations have changed when teams come up against us because we've been playing so well, and teams tend to go a bit more conservative, um, and we have had to come up against that situation quite a lot. And Watkins does quite often come up as the guy who nicks as a last minute goal or makes the space for someone else. And Arsenal haven't really got that figured out just yet. They've been struggling to win games when teams defend well against them in the box because they don't have that focal point. I think it's also a problem with last night. I got the feeling that it was a problem with decision making as well. They're obviously a young team.
Low confidence
Um,
as well.
yeah, they're a young team. Their confidence has taken a bit of a knock because they're on a bad run of form, and in those moments, you just make the wrong decisions. And they're playing. They've got these players like Erdegaard and Havertz. Obviously, neither of them have a particularly great goal scoring instinct. They're more creative players.
Jesus Christ, the dogs are going nuts. What the
Hello,
hell?
you're
What?
getting like an intruder or
Oh,
something.
no, it's my sister's just got home and they were going nuts.
Yeah, so Ødegaard and Havertz, they're creative players predominantly. They're not goal scorers. Last night, Ødegaard and Havertz were the players in those kind of shooting positions. Ødegaard hit the bar with one. Havertz had a couple where he could have shot first time and he just took too many touches. If they were playing, they played Havertz through the centre as a central striker. If they had a more traditional, say, a Haaland type player, they're the kind of players where you play them a ball in and they just shoot on instinct and they don't
Yeah,
overdo it, they don't think it. And yeah, it's definitely something that Arsenal potentially missing. Liverpool though, um,
they have that
had
player.
a,
He just misses.
yeah, yeah. Liverpool. Well, I mean, Liverpool's a different. Like they play a very different system.
Yeah,
Um, they don't rely on it so much. They've got three forwards who are clinical. And who know what to do in those kind of final third situations. They've also got Trent Alexander-Arnold, who just pops up in the box everywhere, and he's scoring goals and getting assists and stuff.
yeah,
Um, they played a pretty bad first half yesterday, to be honest. They kind of set up wrong. Arsenal were all over them, should have scored. But the impressive thing with Liverpool, and it's what you often say about what you hear people say about teams that win titles, is that they can change things up when they're not playing well, and they can grind out results and hold on in situations when they're under pressure. Liverpool did both those things. They were under pressure first half massively, but they defended their box really well and hung on. And then when they had the opportunity at half time, they changed system. They brought on someone at right back, put Trent more in midfield. Um, I think they brought Gravenberch on and they put Nunez out on the left, whereas he was playing through the middle, and basically completely changed the game. Nunez was running that left channel constantly. Trent was just whacking balls up to him over the top. Um, and they regained control of the game, and yeah, they were a much better team second half and got the win. So I think
yeah.
based on
I think
last
it's.
night,
Oh, sorry.
you would have to say Liverpool are above Arsenal anyway in terms of a title shout.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you kind of mentioned what I was talking about with Villa there, where we're not all out trying to just dominate the ball and hand opponents in their own box. They still play this sort of more dynamic style where they can switch it up, as you say. They're trying to pull the opposition out a bit more so they can create a sort of faux counter attack, which we often do, which is more beneficial to your forwards than, and that even if they're not necessarily the kind of forward who's going to be operating exceptionally in tight spaces and in a crowded box, it doesn't really matter because at least probably 50% of your chances, whatever it is, are still going to come from faux counter attacks or at least high speed direct attacks, which Nunez is a lot more effective in, even when it comes to assisting other players, not just scoring. So I think that's how they do it really, and I think Arsenal could take a leaf out of our book and Liverpool's in that sense. We've seen City switch it up on occasion, but very, very rarely. I think they did it against Arsenal last year when Arsenal were really in great form, and they just ended up blowing them away just by saying, you know what, you've come here to try and beat us at our own game. We're not even going to play our game. We're just going to play a different game, and we're going to counter you, and we're going to use De Bruyne and Haaland to do it. And they just tore them apart. And I think Arsenal just haven't quite taken that approach yet. And I think once they do, we could see them become a little more pragmatic in games. They might be able to find those results where they didn't previously and adapt to different opponents a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean they're not far away, are they? I mean, we talked about this season how they have been a bit more pragmatic earlier in the season, where they were a bit more defensively solid, a bit less free flowing in attack, and that seemed to be working for them for a while. Seems now that teams have found it out a little bit, or it's just that Arsenal are not finishing their chances, and it's a confidence thing. Um, but yeah, they've kind of tried to balance it, but they've not got the balance right yet. And I think you can't rule them out. They're not far off the top of the league now. They're a good team. They've got the players to adapt the style of play. It's just whether they will and whether they can get the balance right. I think players are a big part of this as well, because you said that City, we very rarely see City change it up. That is true. They always play more or less with the same kind of a similar structure, or at least similar principles within a
Yeah,
different shape or whatever. But one big change they did make is they signed Haaland, and that kind of elevated their level from already a brilliant team that was winning Premier League titles to by far and away the best team in the world last year, winning basically everything, because they didn't really adapt their style of play, but you know everybody defends in a low block against City. They recognise this as a problem, and usually they have ways of figuring it out. But sometimes I guess they'd come unstuck because it is sometimes just really, really, really difficult to break down a low block. And they identified one thing they need is a striker with those instincts, a striker who can pop up and win headers when you have to resort to just crossing the ball into the box and stuff. And that's probably the most significant change City have made in recent seasons.
Well, I'd say the
The
reason they
team,
were so effective last year is obviously Haaland. They identified the difficulty in the box when teams were playing a low block. They brought him in. He did fantastically well. Did exactly what we expected him to. The thing is, they still had Riyad Mahrez, who's so good technically and so good at taking on people one on ones with close control. He's able to operate in those tight spaces and open teams up. But that's kind of individual level talent. You also had Gundogan, who is again really, really comfortable in those tight spaces, constantly arriving late in the box, and with the kind of dominance and control City have, when he was doing that, they kind of had the comfortability, especially with Rodri there, to say we don't mind him making those late runs into the box every single time we get there, and providing us more options because we have that solidarity behind him and the solid defensive structure. So losing those losing the two players, Gundogan and Mahrez, is probably what has partially contributed to the decline. Of course, Doku can operate similarly to those guys, but he's very young. He's only been in the squad here and there, so it's not going to be that fluid a change. Foden's not necessarily that kind of player. I think he likes to operate with a bit more space generally. He can operate in tight spaces and things, but it's not really his game, and he's probably more of a midfielder than attacker, but yeah, still a great finisher as we've seen. So him playing off the right and mostly Grealish playing off the left, it doesn't necessarily lend itself towards being able to open up those tight low blocks, which they were so
yeah,
capable of doing last year.
they've had to make some adjustments, and it's not quite come together with them. We've obviously talked about Liverpool and Arsenal. The other main title contender in most people's eyes is obviously City. Um, Talking about the injuries they've had and the way they've had to change up the team, De Bruyne came on last night,
Hmm.
and Doku came on last night. De Bruyne assisted a Doku goal
Yeah,
last night.
yeah,
So
the last night.
um, so they're what like game in hand and 5 points off the top.
Yeah, I think
Even
it's going
though,
to be City. To be fair, I think if we're going
yeah,
to just get down to it, I think it's a City title. Those players coming back, and if need be, I think they're probably going to sign a DM. I've seen the likes of Man United looking at Fofana, who we mentioned in the transfers video. His contract's up in the summer. I think they're willing to accept a fee of around £25 million. You could probably haggle them for a bit less. If anyone's going to do that, City might do it if they're letting Calvin Phillips go.
yeah,
So I think that they'll probably strengthen in January without spending too much money. And again, we all know about the way they perform in the second half of the season. We all know the quality
yeah,
they
some
have.
voodoo stuff going on.
Yeah, I think Liverpool will give it a good go, but because of the lack of depth in the sort of back half of their squad, you can just see there be occasional frailties, and when the pressure's really on, there might be the odd draw where they should have won.
Yeah, well, that's the thing with
That sort of
Liverpool is
thing.
that they've looked good. They've been really good, obviously, but they have looked a bit fragile at times, and there's probably a few results where they were lucky to get the points that they did. Um, but then when you compare to City, all the talk is about City being off it, and it's being like an off year because they've been fourth in the league and whatever. But even with them underperforming their own standards fairly significantly, they're well within touching distance, and they've now got several players, including probably their best player, coming back from injury, and it is very hard to look past them, especially with Liverpool looking like they could drop points here and there. I feel like everything's pointing towards City
Well,
getting it together for another mad run.
it's not that you could necessarily see Liverpool dropping points, even though obviously everyone's dropped points so far. It's not necessarily that I can see them doing it because they are doing it or anything like that. It's just when you look at the squad and you consider what we were talking about the other week about teams aren't always at their best level, right? So when you think of City, you think of them as this all-dominant, amazing team, and it's about how often you can stay close to your top level with squad management and things like that. Because of Liverpool's lack of squad depth, you can just imagine that they won't be at this level that they're at for the rest of the entire season because they're going to
Yeah,
struggle to manage it as well. And that's
yeah.
probably what it comes down to,
I
really.
think even without the problems with the squad, I think the way that they've been playing and the system they're playing, while it is obviously working for them and they will win the majority of their games, I think there's little cracks in it, and I think they'll get found out at certain points. To this point, they've maybe been a little bit fortunate, and they've been relying on their unity as a team and stuff, which Klopp is really good at garnering. Don't get me wrong; like it's impressive how they manage to keep doing that. But at the same time, it's hard to imagine it lasting, especially when the pressure is on with City coming up behind them. I think there's just little cracks in the system with Liverpool. Um, Whereas with City, they're only going to improve their level with De Bruyne coming back and stuff. So yeah, it looks like City for the title. Who would you say second? Liverpool.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of points, like I think City are on for an 80-point haul if you just go off the games so far. But I think we'll definitely see an improvement in their form in the second half of the season. I think they'll probably be at least high 80s. They've got 57 points remaining to win for the rest of the season available. So it's just a question of how many of those games do you think they drop points out of the 19. If you think about the kind of runs they've been on in previous years, you could maybe say if they match those levels, you're looking at maybe 3 draws and a loss potentially. So you're dropping, what is that? 9 points, is it? I think.
I don't know, man. I'm not doing maths. I'm not doing
Um,
quick maths.
so if they drop that and you look at 40, it's about 88 points. So if they
Yeah.
can reach 88 points, if I don't know if I see Liverpool reaching that or not. I'd say it's going to be close. It's going to be a point or two in it, but I think
Yeah.
City will scrape it.
Yeah, that's the thing when it gets you're halfway through the season, and obviously the top teams rarely drop points anyway. And so when there is a gap, like you say that 5 points, whatever it is a small gap. At the same time, teams do rarely drop points. So um, yeah, I feel like there probably will be a couple points in it. I don't know. I mean, I could still see it going to Liverpool, to be honest. Like, it's all speculation whether City will improve their level. Obviously, it's you've got these players coming back. There's evidence there to suggest that they will, but at the same time, they haven't really done it yet in reality in the league. Um, so I don't know. Maybe I still see City having the odd game where they drop points and Liverpool take it. You think Arsenal are out of the question?
Yeah, Arsenal are out of the question for me. Do you know what, just the fact that you've doubted it a little bit has just made me even stronger in my opinion that City are winning the league. Definitely.
Why?
Just it just has. I can't explain it. Just it just has. City are definitely winning the league now. That's it.
Okay. Well, now I hope they don't, just because you're so certain about it.
Yeah, perfect. That's what I wanted. Yeah, so I think City to win it, Liverpool to come very, very close second. I think Arsenal will be closest to us than they will be Liverpool, or potentially
Really?
Spurs if they.
Do you think Villa could finish third?
Yeah, we could, but it depends really on how the squad looks when Kamara's back. If we pick up, if when Kamara comes back and we can bring in more depth as well, then I don't see a reason we don't finish third above Arsenal in their current state. If they don't sign the right players or they get any more injuries or this kind of dip in form continues, which it might do because they have so many young players, especially like Saka, that are so overused. I think
Mm,
the burnout is going to last longer than perhaps some people expect, especially with Champions League games and things. He's not going to get a rest very often, and if that's the case, I think his productivity will be greatly reduced. In that case, I'd say, yeah, we finish above them. As things stand, I think they finish above us, but only marginally. I think they'll be on low 80 points. We might be sort of high 70s, low 80s. I think
Okay.
just because is Son going to be out for any point in this year? Is there an Asian?
Yeah, he's out now. Yeah.
He's out now. Okay. How
Yeah,
long for?
Asia Cup and AFCON. It's happening now, so I think it's up to 6 weeks. They'll be out if they get to the final, which South Korea are heavy favourites for the
Yeah,
tournament. So the expectation is he'll be out for 6 weeks. But I think January's quite sparse in terms of games, so I think he'll miss maybe 4 games at
three or
max
four.
or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Madison and Mickey Van der Ven obviously still yet to come back. Basuma
Van
and
de Ven
Papamatasa.
is close though. I
Okay.
think Van de Ven's been on the bench in their cup game. I think he was on the
Okay.
bench against Burnley.
Okay. He'll probably be back soon. Madison's still
Yeah.
not back. Basuma and Papamatasa are going to Cup of Nations, so their midfield will be a bit depleted. They haven't got Benton Kerr back, so you're looking at Lo Celso, Hoiberg, Skip. Am I forgetting anyone? I must have one more in there.
Midfielders.
Yeah, I think
Um,
I'm missing one.
that's it really. Well, Benton Kerr, but he's
He's
been.
injured, yeah. So
Well,
yeah,
he played against Burnley, but I don't know whether he came off injured again. I don't know.
oh, I thought he was a long-term injury when he played against us. Was it just?
No, it
Oh,
was like a month. It was like a
oh,
month.
okay, right.
It wasn't a bad one.
Okay, so he could come back, but whether he's effective or not, we won't know. It's quite a defensive midfield they've got left, and then you're looking at Richarlison, Brennan Johnson, Kulusevski,
Yeah, they've got Lo
Tony
Celso as well, who
Pulis.
could
Yeah,
drop into a centre mid, but playing a more offensive role.
I think yeah they'll still be good. They'll still be good,
Yeah,
but will they be? Will they have enough depth and enough strength and quality to beat us to fourth place? I think no, just because of how we were talking about earlier with most of the big teams we've played, it's been away, and some of the difficult games like Brentford, for example, we've played away, and I think a lot of the home teams that we've beaten heavily have been teams that aren't necessarily as difficult to play. Like a Crystal Palace, they're not the best. We beat them at home. Um, who else we played at home?
played Everton at home.
Yeah, we
Got them
played
next.
Luton at home.
Yeah,
Um,
Fulham.
Sheffield United. I mean, we drew against them, but we played them at home. These kinds of teams, a lot of the home games we've had this half of the season, not all of them, but a lot of them have been against sort of some of the weaker sides.
Yeah, I mean we've
So I
got
think that,
Liverpool at
yeah,
home, we've got Newcastle at home, we've got Man United, Spurs at home.
yeah,
We played Arsenal City at home already, obviously. So
yeah,
counting out them, we've got most of the teams around us still to play at home. So you would back us in those games.
yeah. I think it's in terms of the teams around us, it's more favourable in the second half of the season. So I'd say as long as we can sort of replicate the kind of form or get stronger, or just get somewhere around that level in terms of form, I think that will turn into as many points, potentially more. So, but again, I also think based off current levels, which is just last sort of 3 games or so, there's a reason to believe we might not get quite as many points just because we did struggle to manage a couple of those games. But there are so many other caveats with it being Christmas, with the squad depth issues that we had in terms of Kamara being out, etc. So I'm not going to take that hugely into account. Like it's definitely a factor. So I think we'll probably, as I say, finish sort of low 80s, high 70s kind of points and be fourth place and probably ahead of Spurs.
Yeah, I'd take that. That would be a dream season, really. I think I more or less agree. I am worried about Spurs because I think when you just look at their squad, even though it's depleted, they've still got more quality in some areas. Just on the basis of them having more investment over years and years. Like they've still got even Lo Celso. Lo Celso's been really on the fringes, and people forgot that he even played for Spurs. But he's come in, and he's obviously still a really great player. Whereas we don't have those kind of players lying around that we can
Mm.
pull back and rely on when players are out. And then they've got Son, obviously, who is just insane. So I am worried about them because they're playing well, but yeah, you could say we've looked a bit shaky in recent weeks. So have Tottenham. To be honest, they've been getting results, but they've not been
Yeah, a lot of teams have had
performing
their blips.
at
So
the same level.
other than
Yeah,
Liverpool, really.
Yeah, I
Gets
think
below.
there's no reason to suggest currently that Villa will drop below them because we've both had kind of dips in performance levels. Um, we both we both will have good seasons going forward, but based on the fact that we've kind of been marginally better in the first half of the season, I think suggests that we there's no reason we shouldn't continue that.
Yeah,
Um,
and with the squad management as well, we always talk about Emery's ability to manage the
yeah,
intensity and manage
yeah,
players' minutes compared to a team like Spurs who are so intense in games and do pick up injuries because of that. Just the longevity of our season, I think, as well, it looks more promising. Although we do have, obviously, European football that they don't have to contend with. Maybe that comes into it, but
yeah.
again,
That is a factor.
we've got a decent amount of squad depth where we can rotate a little bit, and if we bring in more, that's going to help with that to an even greater degree. And yeah, he's managed it pretty perfectly so far. He's done that so many years. It's not too much of a concern for me, so I'm pretty happy about our chances of top four. And even though if we don't top five, especially with the kind of teams that are still left in European competitions, I think we predicted that at the start of the season. We would have taken that at the start of the season, and it
Yeah,
would probably be, fingers crossed, touch wood, Champions League. Um, so yeah, not too concerned if we don't get it because I'd still take fifth. Should we move
absolutely.
on to relegation?
Yeah, I mean, 20th place you can probably write off already, unfortunately.
Can you?
Um, yes,
Can you?
I mean not completely,
Ben
but
Brereton Diaz. Him with Cameron Archer. You never know.
I would like Sheffield United to improve. I think they will improve on their first half of the season. Whether they'll improve enough and improve more than the teams around them to get off bottom, I don't know. Um,
I can see Burnley going finishing bottom.
I could see that. I could see that.
I think Sheffield could potentially kind of follow in Luton's footsteps and just have no ego about it and just try and shithouse everything and
They've
just
been
see if it
trying
comes
that
off.
already, though.
But
It's
now
not been
with Ben
working.
Brereton Diaz, it's a different story, mate. That kind of power and intensity up front
I
will
mean, I
just
do
be
think
a
it's a good signing. It
nuisance.
will
Yeah.
improve them. I think. Yeah.
I don't know if he'll score any
Um,
goals, but he'll certainly help them.
yeah. So what are you saying then? Burnley bottom?
I think Burnley bottom, yeah, just because they just haven't found a way to make it work yet. And
No.
if you haven't done it halfway through, there's not much of an argument to say you're going to be able to do it in the second half. They've improved,
No.
sure, and looked like they've been able to score more goals in games at times. But with the likes of Koleosho out and things like that, and the fact that they probably did spend quite a bit of money in summer on building that squad up, I don't know if they have much room to strengthen in January. And I just see things going the same way. The only team they can feasibly beat again is Sheffield United because they've only done it. That's pretty much the only team they've beaten, isn't it? Bar like one or two fluky results somewhere.
Um,
Fulham as
yeah,
well
they've
away.
won 3 games. I can't remember who.
Fulham away was one, but I can't remember the other one. So yeah, my instinct says Burnley bottom, Sheffield United second bottom. Luton, I kind of have this idea that there's going to be a great escape.
I would love it, man. I'd love it.
It's just who's gonna take their place. Like instinctively, when I think about it, I'm looking at Forest or Brentford at the moment. I don't think Everton will be there just because Dyche seems to have weaved his magic and got his claws into some of those players, and he's just moving them around on the pitch like puppets, doing his thing. So I think they
Yeah, they
will
still
be
have the
all
odd
right
bad
in
result though.
mid-table. Sorry.
They still have the odd bad result.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's an odd bad result, and with the intensity they play and the physicality they've got in games, like if a team turns up and they're not on it, they just get dominated. Not necessarily from a possession point of view and a footballing point of view, but just mentally and physically, they just get walked
Yeah,
all over, and that has proved such an effective tactic for Everton at times. And especially as you get into the latter stages of the season, if some teams are on the beach, as you say, or if some teams have got nothing to play for, or they've lost faith in the manager, anything like that, and they just don't turn up, or they're a bit tired, whatever it is, Everton are the team to just walk all over them essentially and just probably score like three corners.
Yeah, no, I don't think Everton will be either. To be honest, I think it's like I want the Luton love story to continue. Like they've been so entertaining,
Yeah,
and they're the most unlikely team to do it as well because they came through the playoffs. They finished like sixth or something in the championship. They weren't even anywhere near the top. Nobody even expected them to be in the playoffs. Came absolutely out of nowhere. Spent no money whatsoever, but they're playing really well. Um, but it's just the problem is who drops in because Brentford have got Tony coming back.
yeah,
They're going to improve. Forest have got
you hope.
new manager, decent squad. They look better.
I think
Uh,
it'll be Forest. I
you
think
actually
Forest
do
go.
think Forest will drop in,
I think Forest. Like, if you to make me bet on it, I probably wouldn't bet on it, but just
but do you think they actually will?
in my, I think if anyone is to go into the relegation zone, bar the teams that are in there right now, it will be Forest. I don't think
But
it'll
you
be,
don't actually think they will do it.
but it's not that I don't think they will. It's just that I'm too much of a pussy to definitely say
That's
that
like
they
a
will.
politician's answer.
Yeah, basically. Um,
No, I see what you mean though.
yeah,
I think like realistically, like you say, if you were to bet on it, you'd probably still bet on Luton going down just because they are in the relegation zone now. They've got the least resources. But
the way they've been
yeah,
playing, the kind of
if you had
narrative
to pick a
around it.
team, um, I think maybe Forest. But then they've just beat Newcastle and Man United. You know,
If you look at the teams defensively and goals scored, Luton and Nottingham Forest are very, very similar on that scale. And Luton have been getting better and better, if you ask me, as the season's gone on, whereas Forest have very much been sort of seesawing. And while Nuno has come in and he's made a couple of players look good, we could say that's a new manager bounce because when you look at what Unai Emery did, while there was immediate improvements, you saw a change in the way the squad played. You saw improvements in that sense. You saw improvements all over the club. Whereas with Nuno, he just came in. All of a sudden, Forest are like a completely different team with players doing things they don't normally do. That sort of speaks to something maybe perhaps psychological. Like Chris Wood turned into I don't even know Cavani or something for like a game. Um, so
yeah, he's always been like a decent footballer though.
yeah, yeah. But what basically what I'm getting down to is their numbers are sort of the worst of the teams around them. They're similar to Luton's. They're not in as great a headspace as Luton are. So I just think Luton have more motivation and it's a better story. They're doing far better than people expected already. I think just the momentum's there with them. It's hard to say they definitely will do it, but I'm just gonna back them to get out, and I think Forest to go down.
Fair enough. I'd like to see it, but I just don't think I can. I think this is yeah. It's just the problem is who drops down. I think probably out of all the teams left in the league, Forest or Brentford are most likely to drop down. But Brentford have obviously got Tony coming back. But I just can't see Forest dropping that much. Like they've already got 5 points on Luton, and they've just beaten Newcastle and Man United. That's not, that is like too small of a sample to suggest that they're going to improve in the long term, for sure. But they have got a good squad. Nuno's a manager who's done it in the Premier League before. I just don't see them dropping that far back, really. I think if I would say maybe if it's going to be anyone, maybe Brentford more likely than Forest.
Yeah, you could say that, but
Um,
I just have a feeling Forest to go down. Maybe points deduction
yeah,
coming their way as
well,
well. So
I'm going to stick with Luton. Unfortunately, I'd love to back Luton, but I just can't see it. So I think it'll be Sheffield United bottom, Burnley, then Luton
year of little faith.
for me.
Year of
Yeah,
little faith. All right, so let's move on to Champions League. This one's a bit more interesting because we have multiple teams in the Champions League this year that could just dominate. You've got City, Arsenal with their defensive qualities might do a job in the Champions League, just because they might not blow teams away, but if they can make it through 120 minutes, for example, without conceding, you've always got a chance. So
Yeah, I think they'll be. I mean, they're still fourth in the Premier League. It's only a recent dip in form. I think it's yeah, you'd still got to back them to do decent. I think they've got Porto in the round of 16. You should definitely expect them to get through.
yeah, let me get the tree up, so to speak. I think Bayern are probably favourites at this point, just because of
No,
Harry Kane
no
and
way,
yes,
no
yes, way.
way.
No, I'd say they're favourites.
They're not even they're not even doing anything in the Bundesliga.
It's not about being in the Bundesliga. It's about, you know, when you're in a knockout game, it's completely different to a league game, right? Because in a league game, you're trying to instill your philosophy. You're trying to have an element of control that you can kind of carry from each game to game, and you're trying to build something, right? In Champions League, each week it's a reset. It's like, okay, this is the new opponent. Nothing matters apart from winning this game, no matter how we do it, right? And when you've got players like Harry Kane, Leroy Sane, Kimmich, you've got Kim Min Jae at the back, you've just got these huge personalities that in a one-off game can dominate their opposition and come up with magical moments. I just think it could be their year.
Yeah, I mean they're obviously up there in terms of favourites. I think if you're going to go for an out and out favourite, I think it's got to be City. But obviously Bayern are up there. Yeah, I think Bayern are up there with favourites in the top few favourite teams. But I think if you had to pick an out and out favourite, I can't look past City. I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, City have the easiest fixture, of course, so I think we'll easily see them through to the quarterfinals.
Yeah,
Just
I mean
off the tree I've got
fixture
in front
doesn't
of me,
really.
that would put them up against Real Madrid in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, I was going to say Real Madrid are the other team.
And we all know what Real Madrid are like in the Champions League. Now, with a big
Yeah,
moments player to replace Benzema, like Bellingham, who's got more energy, who's going to be more consistent, most likely, just because he's younger, he's more hungry. Um, I think it could be their year again. It could be their year. Could be a Bellingham Champions League. Yeah.
could
City
be.
City. It's their reluctance to ever change from this style of play that we've got. We talked about it earlier. That makes me think perhaps it could come back to haunt them, because obviously they've struggled in the league a little bit, and we always say they have blips, but this one feels a little different because we saw their almost complete lack of ability to win games without Rodri, and if that's going to be the case, that's a pretty fragile system. So I just it doesn't breed as much confidence in me. I think Inter, they'll definitely get to the semis. I think they'll get to the semis for sure. Whether they
Inter.
yeah
You think they'll be? Who have they got? Atletico Madrid.
yeah I think they'll get past Atletico Madrid. I don't think that'll be their
That'll be
probably
tight.
I think that'll be their hardest fixture until they'll probably if they get to the final that'd be their hardest fixture until they get to the
Yeah,
final.
I think to be fair, you probably would if you had to pick a team. I'd go for Inter. To be fair, in that fixture.
Yeah, I mean obviously I don't know if this tree that I'm looking at is necessarily exactly who they'll be lining up against, but if it were to be, the hardest teams they can come up against going up to the final, other than the team they're playing already, Atletico Madrid, is Arsenal, Barcelona, Napoli, and none of those teams have really set the world alight this year. They're all looking a little bit hit and miss at times, and Inter just have this kind of aura about them, and they're just consistently up there in the league every year. Got to the final last year and probably deserved to win the final, to be fair, on balance. So I think they'll go far. I think Bayern will definitely beat PSG if they come up against them in a
Yeah,
quarter final. So I don't know. I think we're looking
I
at four
mean,
teams basically: Inter, Bayern, City, and Real Madrid. And I think for me, the strongest of those, who I'm leaning towards, is Bayern and Inter as a final.
fair play. Big calls.
Mm.
I don't really. I think I agree with the final four. To be fair, it's really hard to choose between them because I think City are the better team there. I think just based on the fact that they won everything last year.
Yeah,
They'll have De Bruyne back. They'll have Haaland back, etc. City are probably the best team there. Bayern Munich, like you say, they're always up there. Their squad's insane. They've signed Kane. Um, They've got a manager who's won the Champions League before, so they're going to be big contenders. Real Madrid, the same really. They're having a good season. They're having a really, really solid season, actually. Their defense is insanely strong. They've conceded 11 goals this year.
Who's that? Sorry,
Um,
I got distracted for a sec.
Real Madrid.
Oh, well, do you know
Uh,
who's even better than that? Who's top of their league, only lost one game and only conceded 9 goals?
well,
Inter.
Verona.
Inter.
Oh, right. Well, yeah, but Inter I don't think Inter have as good a squad though.
It's a good squad, though. It is a very good squad. I think it's an underrated
Of
squad.
course, yeah, of course, it's a
It's an
good squad,
underrated
but
squad.
I don't think they're as strong a team as Real Madrid.
I just see them that they're built for knockout tournaments as well. The way they
Yeah,
play.
no, I don't disagree. I think, like I said, I think your final four is accurate. I just don't know. I don't know who I'd pick for the final. It's the thing. I think City are strong, Bayern Munich are strong. Real Madrid are having one of their best seasons in a while, and they've got Jude Bellingham now. And Inter are flying in their league as well, and they're always up there.
Do you know what? I'm going to change a little bit. Well, I think if you look at how teams are playing and the assets they've got right now and their suitability to tournament football, I think still Bayern and Inter are probably favourites. But I think based off the narrative and sentiment, I could see and would like a Real Madrid Inter final where I think Inter probably win it for me.
Big call. Yeah,
That's
I
it.
don't
I'm
know.
going for it.
I'm
Inter.
not convinced by Inter just because I think there's more holes in their squad than there are at Real Madrid.
That's fair enough.
Um,
That's fair enough.
that would be my only reasoning, really. Um, yeah, it's tough to call it. It will kind of depend on how the draw falls as well. Obviously, if any of these teams come up against each other. Okay, you're saying so you started off by saying that Bayern are your favourites, but now you're saying it's Inter's year.
I know. I think Bayern are the favourites based on what they've got in their squad, like the guys who can come up with goals when it really matters. Haaland, he does it at times, but he hasn't really shown to be a big game player yet. And
Yeah,
Bellingham, we haven't seen him in the latter stages of a Champions League with Real Madrid yet, so it's hard to say whether he's going to be able to do that or not. Because I think it really does often come down to those sort of talismanic players, and the reason I think Inter will win it is because obviously they've got Lautaro and Thuram, they've got those kind of talismanic sort of players, not as good as the other teams, but I think they don't need that because the way they approach knockout games, they just frustrate their opponents so much, and they play such a great counter-attacking style. They're a big game team, if you know what I mean, kind of like Real Madrid, and because I think they are just they're still riding the wave of last year. I think they're still on such a positive trajectory. Um, I just back them to do it. I just think they're playing so well. They're such a good tournament team. That's what I think. But I think based off the players that are in the squads and the managers, you'd probably look at I think Bayern as favourites. But my personal opinion is Inter would do it. If you know what I mean.
Okay, well, yeah, okay. I think City are favourites for me, but I think in terms of who will actually win it, hmm, I might go Real Madrid.
Oh, who do you think they'll beat in the final?
Maybe Bayern. It depends how the draw falls. It's hard to really predict. I think obviously City could be up there. City could absolutely be up there. City could absolutely win it. But I think like you said about losing Rodri and stuff, and questions about Haaland in big games. If Rodri did happen to be out for a fixture, or if he got a yellow card and then he was out for the second leg, they would struggle. Um, yeah, and I don't know. Real Madrid have got that magic about them in the Champions League. They're really solid this year, and they've got Bellingham, who is definitely a big game player.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a shot in the dark, really, because I think any of those teams could win it, and I think even like there's a chance that Inter don't even get into the semis. There's a chance that Arsenal do really well. Um, like PSG are always there because they're squad, but like I don't know, don't really want to. Not really
If I were to
PSG.
just predict the entire thing, like I think I think Napoli probably get past Barcelona. I think Arsenal get
Really?
past. I don't even know who they're playing, but I think they do it. I'm not too concerned about who wins out of Borussia Dortmund and whoever they're playing, because I just don't think they've got it in them. I think Inter beat Atletico. I think they beat whoever they come up against in the semi-final, which would probably be, based off what I've said, maybe. Hang on, sorry. And Napoli. I haven't even looked at
It would
I've got.
be it
I
would
need
be
to think.
City, Real Madrid,
Are Napoli playing
Napoli.
Barcelona?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
Barcelona
Arsenal
are
would
winning
beat.
that one.
I think Napoli will win it. I think Arsenal will beat Napoli. Then I think Inter beat Arsenal to get to the final. On the other side, obviously City go through. I think Real Madrid go through. The other fixture, I can't even remember who's in there. I don't care. I think Bayern go through. Bayern probably make it to the semis, and I just don't have a lot of faith in City this year. I have faith in them in the league, but as a tournament team, I just don't know if they'll do it again.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, even in years when they've won the Premier League with 100 points, they've struggled in the Champions League. So
Yeah, I think last year they got lucky to win it in the final. It's always difficult for a team to do it back to back. So
yeah,
I just don't back them in the Champions League this year. I think Real Madrid will get past them. I think they'll struggle to get past Bayern, but I think it could be one of those situations like they've done before, where it's one of those miraculous kind of they've just stuck it out the whole game. Bayern have been on top, and then they get that moment in the final minutes of the game and just tip it slightly, in their favour and get the goal. And then that would produce the final of Real Madrid Inter. I think Ancelotti last year said he wanted the AC Milan Real Madrid final. Of course, he didn't get it, but I think he would love a final against Inter. Not that this is any reason that it's going to happen, but I just like the spectacle would be great. I think they'd put a
that
really,
would
really
be a
good,
fun
exciting
game.
game together.
Yeah.
So that's why I want it to happen. But yeah, there you go. Should we move on to Europa League? Unless you've got anything else you fancy on the Champions League.
No, I think they're exhausted there. I mean, it's just a hard one to call, isn't it?
Yeah.
Europa. Let's have a look at
Yeah, I've
the.
got to remind myself who actually is in it.
So Liverpool are still in Europa League, so they're clear favourites, I think.
Yeah, right. So, we've still got the playoff rounds to go.
Yeah, there's another round of knockouts.
I mean, AC Milan potentially could be in there.
Yeah,
Roma are a decent tournament side. Benfica could be in there. They're usually decent, but they've been a bit off it this year in Europe. As you say, if we've got Liverpool in there, West Ham. What do you think? Maybe they could go a round or two. I think when they come up
who've they got in
against.
the? Are they in the knockout round?
Well, they,
No,
they, they
they're
don't
not.
they,
They're
they don't
through.
have the tournament tree yet, just because the playoff round's not done. But
Yeah,
I just think when they come up against a big team of real quality, like a Milan, maybe a Benfica, or even potentially a Liverpool, someone like that, I just
yeah. I
think they'll
think they're
do it.
not quite. They're going to struggle against those teams, but I could see them going. Uh, yeah, winning one or two games, maybe getting to the quarterfinals.
I think Leverkusen are definitely a shout for a final here.
Oh Christ, yeah, I forgot about them. Them and Liverpool have got to be favourites.
Yeah, I think just off the bat you could probably say I don't. It's hard with Leverkusen because obviously their group. I mean, most people haven't even heard of the teams in their group, so it's hard to say that that's a basis of them being great in Europe this year because it's been not the greatest challenge for them. Um, and then you're looking at the likes of Milan, who got to Champions League semi-final last year, who have really, really good quality in that squad. When it comes to a high-pressure game in like the semi-final or something, Milan could well do it.
Yeah,
For
maybe
example,
Leverkusen could see them suffering from a lack of experience. But I mean, based on domestic form, they're they're unbeaten and top of the Bundesliga. But yeah, I could see maybe inexperience in Europe being a bit of a factor when compared to teams like Liverpool and AC Milan.
yeah, I think if they came up against Liverpool, there's a decent chance of them winning that just because of the styles of the teams. But if they came up against Milan, I just think Milan would dig in deep and have the experience soak up all the pressure and make the most of any opportunities they create. So I think I'm going to go for a nostalgic Liverpool Milan final. Yeah,
Decent. I
that's what
like
I'm going to
that.
do.
I like that, but I think I've got to go with Leverkusen. I think they're
That's
just.
fair enough. Yeah.
It would be a shame if they didn't do well because they're such a good team. Like it would be great to see them win something. Um, so yeah, I think I'll go Leverkusen in the final, and then it's hard to look past Liverpool. Really, I mean, yeah, we've got West Ham, we've got Brighton, um, but
They've shown too many frailties so far this year to
yeah,
be
I
that
think when it comes
confident.
down to it, there's a few teams who I could see beating them. I think I'm just going to go Leverkusen, Liverpool. I think they're quite clearly the two best teams based on
Yeah,
domestic performance. So
I mean, Xabi Alonso does kind of look like in his career trajectory that he's the next Pep, essentially. So
yeah,
he,
yeah,
I don't know if he starts it off with a Europa League win, but he's certainly I think they'll go far. But as I say, I think Milan will, if they encounter Milan before the final or even in the final, I think Milan probably overcome that challenge. And so yeah, I'd back a Liverpool Milan final and probably a Liverpool win. To be fair,
decent.
what do you
And
think?
then we do the conference,
Who's your
really, don't
winner?
we?
Who's your winner? Is it Leverkusen?
Oh, man, that's tough. Uh, I'm gonna go Leverkusen.
Ooh, big shout. And then Conference League. Do we need to delve into this much?
Not too much. I mean, we could talk about who we. Presumably, we're both going Villa to be in the
Of,
final,
of course, of course, of course.
right? So, who do we think we're playing? Well, this is a difficult one actually because there's going to be Europa League teams dropping down.
Yeah, the thing is, you can't see the tournament tree as well.
Yeah, I mean, Fiorentina were in the final last year. They won their group this year, so you presume they're going to do all right.
The only
I
big
think
teams that could potentially come in
Bruges.
is Frankfurt, Ajax, Olympiacos. That's it, really. Ajax are off it this year,
Yeah, I'm not really too
massively off
worried
it.
about any of
Um,
those.
Frankfurt, I would be kind of worried about potentially just because they have a little bit of European pedigree from recent years and they've shown they can produce really, really good away support as well as home support, and they can be a real challenge. Betis, I don't really know enough about the way they play or their history to say
No.
how much of a difficult game that would be. I think the bigger challenge would probably be Fiorentina out of anyone.
Yeah.
Um,
Also, I mean, Lille are doing okay in Liga, and they're not doing great.
yeah, but I think just
Uh,
given Unai Emery's prestige and experience, um, and the fact that we're Villa fans, I think you got to go with a Villa win. Just who we'd play in the final is the question.
yeah.
And for me, it'd probably be out of Fiorentina and Frankfurt. Which one I'd go for? Probably. I mean, Fiorentina. I think. Where are they in the league this season? Are they top five in their league this season?
Um,
Let's have a look.
I
They're
think they're
fourth.
like.
They're
I think
fourth.
they're.
So
Yeah. Yeah, I think
considering that,
domestically, of the
yeah,
teams left in domestically, aside from Villa, Fiorentina are doing strongest in
yeah,
quite a strong
they
league.
got to the final last year as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'll back them to get to the final, and I
Yeah, I
think
think I'd have to go with that as well. Really, it's a hard one because you don't know much about some of these teams.
yeah,
One team I would say could do well based on how they performed against us is Legia Warsaw.
potentially, yeah. I think, but
Like,
they're in the knockout round against Moles, who they'll probably beat. You'd imagine. Um,
yeah, I mean, obviously, then they're probably not amongst the favourites, but
mm,
they've played really, really well against us.
yeah,
They're the kind of team where the way they play, they had that kind of mentality about them that they're going to cause a problem for anybody, whoever they play. I imagine they'll probably lose to a team just with better resources and stuff. But I think,
yeah, they kind of have a semi-final, quarter-final
yeah,
like
quarterfinal or something. I think they'll have a decent run.
vibe about them. Yeah. All right. So who's in your final?
I think I've got to go Fiorentina as well. yeah, they've got experience from last year, and domestically they're doing well. So yeah,
Yeah,
hard to look past them really.
fair enough.
So yeah, Villa Fiorentina.
And to be honest, if we didn't win that, I think we'd have a lot of West Ham fans laughing at us. So
Oh no, don't even want
that
to think
that,
about
would,
that.
that wouldn't be fun.
Oh
But I
God.
think yeah, Unai's got the experience, the pedigree, and the know-how to take us there.
Surely, surely.
You'd hope. So yeah, that's our predictions. Should we talk about the Villa badge?
Yeah, well, we were hoping that we'd have a bit more to go off
Yeah,
in terms of an official announcement or something, but we don't. But I think it's pretty much set that the one that's been doing the rounds online is going to be the final version because they've trademarked it and stuff.
the
Yeah,
thing is,
so
what that image that you see, right? People have complained it looks like some kind of Microsoft Paint, like plasticky rubbish, right? But I quite like it. I think it's a subtle change from the original crest that looks. It's very recognisable. It's very much our identity still, and I think when it's actually on kits, if especially if it's embroidered and you know colours might be changed slightly, once it's actually placed onto marketing materials, etc., websites. Once you see it on a league table, once you see it on a shirt, I think it'll look a lot better than it does just on a white background.
yeah,
And that's something I think it's hard to kind of recognise that as someone potentially if you've not done any design work ever, or if you've seen something on a screen compared to on a more like sort of tangible object or something, that it can often be quite a big difference when you actually have something in its physical element compared to in a digital uh, element. And yeah, I just think it'll look a lot better. I think it maintains, as I say, the identity, the shape, and just updates it to look a little bit more modern, a little bit more fresh.
yeah. The thing with maintaining the shape though is that when they did this whole massive process when we had Perslow, and it was a big thing that everyone was excited about changing the badge. One thing that came out of all that consultation they did and fan surveys and stuff is that the vast majority of fans wanted a change from the badge that we've been using in the Randy Lerner era. Um, and now I find it really bizarre that they've just gone back to that era when it was it was incredibly obvious that the fans are not a fan of that badge in the first place.
I don't know if that is the case, to be honest. I'm not. I feel like it was a bit led on in a way, the way that decision was reached, because
It was, yeah. The
there was
surveys weren't brilliant. The questions
yeah,
were a bit leading and stuff.
and it was
But I
kind of
think,
anniversary kind of time as well. There was a lot of talk about the history of the club and things like that, and replicating previous successes, and the fact that we were approaching Europe and stuff. I think if you walked into a room of drunk people and said more beers, they would all agree. Whereas maybe a lot more of them would have not gone and got more beers had you not offered them more beers. Who knows? But that's a bad example. But you know what I mean. If you walk into a room and shout something to everyone and go, "Let's do this," they're much more likely to go, "Yeah," and then if you didn't say anything, they probably wouldn't all come to that decision
yeah,
on
I
their
mean,
own. If you know what I mean.
people like change.
Yeah, I think if you just
It's
put out,
exciting
yeah,
to make a change.
if you put out the question, if you just said, Villa fans, we might be doing a badge redesign. What things would you want to see? I don't necessarily know if the same conclusions would have come to if
Mm,
people would have gone, let's go back to that circle badge, because it would just be such a change in our identity that we've had now long enough that I just feel like it is part of the club now. Obviously the round badge used to be part of our identity, part of what the club was, but there's so many new fans now, and while this period hasn't been the most successful, there have been great players and great moments, and it's not necessarily about just supporting your club for when it was successful and one of the best. It's you should always stick with your club throughout, and we've created a lot of memories with the current badge and things and the way the kits are, etc. So I'm kind of happy to keep it. I think from a branding perspective as well, it is probably the better move in terms of brand recognition and
I just
things.
think it's ugly, man. I can't get over
That's fine. That's fine. I think once you see it on a kit,
it.
you won't be as disappointed.
Why?
I think it'll look better on a kit. I've seen it on a
I mean,
claret background as well. It
everything looks
looks
better in context, sure.
yeah.
Like I get that, but the bright yellow lion, I don't think anybody likes the lion being bright yellow. I think the warmer goldy colours just look much better, and the bright blue color is also kind of contrasting with the yellow lion. It's all just like washed out, too bright. There's not enough claret on there. The name being at the bottom looks weird to me. I just don't like it,
That's fair enough. Uh, Seeing as we
and I
disagree,
just
should we move on?
I mean, yeah, but well, I think it's important to talk about like I just don't know why they've ignored what fans have said. Chris Heck did this video where he said that the fans are the most important thing, and that the badge is for the fans, etc. And then just basically seemed to ignore everything that the fans have been saying.
Well,
It just seems
his
bizarre.
directive is very much more focused from a business side of things and a brand
I know,
perspective.
yeah, but it doesn't make it any better that he ignores. Like, I'd rather he just came out and said, "I'm the professional. I know what I'm doing in terms of marketing. I'm going to do my own thing." But he comes out and he says, "The badge is so important to the fans. We're going to take things from these support groups, blah blah blah," and then just ignores everything they says and comes out with some ugly thing that doesn't represent the club that
Yeah,
well. It's
I
just annoying.
I don't know. I think on this occasion, I'm more interested in the end result than the means of getting there. I don't particularly like what you've just said. It's not ideal, but I think the end result of having what I think will probably commercially be a better badge. Um, I care more about that. I think for the long term, sort of commercial operations of the club rather than the sort of sentiment around the fans wanting the old badge back from however many years ago, and the obviously the questionnaire and everything. But we've spoken about that being a little bit leading, not the best questionnaire, but that's not necessarily the most important factor. But yeah, that I care more about that than the sentiment, etc. So my stance is I'm happy. Yeah, it probably could be a little better, but I'm not complaining.
Yeah, no, I do get what you're saying, because like obviously neither of us were around when we had that really successful period, and the badge we changed to was kind of a hark back to that. Um, and I don't think I don't think it's the best thing to make big decisions like that based on sentiment and nostalgia. And what Chris Heck said in his video was that it's going to be the badge for the club for the next 150 years, whatever. Like, it's got to be forward looking rather than looking back. I do get all that. I think that all makes sense, but. And like, I was excited by the video. I was like, okay, this guy seems to be saying all the right things. But then to me, it just seems like he's made a more ugly version of the badge that we had before we already changed our badge. It just seems like a farce. If you're not going to make anything better, why bother? It just seems like a farce to me.
Yeah, it's fair enough.
But it's I'm not going to make my full conclusions until I've seen a release about it and stuff, because you do have to take everything in context, and
Yeah.
there'll be explanations about it and stuff. So
Yeah,
we'll see
there's plenty of
what comes
teams
of that.
who have had changes in their badges over the recent years, and I think most clubs at some point, their fans will, if they choose to change the badge or change the colour at all, they tend to go up in arms about it. But I don't think it really changes the essence of the club that much unless we went all blue on everything and completely changed the colours and completely changed the look of the badge, etc. I think yes, then there's a time to be very frustrated with the management. But if it's small changes, there's always going to be a subsection of fans that go up in arms about it. It's like, no, don't change anything. But there's many clubs have done it, and it's probably turned out for the better long term. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
not too
agree. I
fussed.
agree. But the only thing I'd say is I don't think it's a small subsection of fans. I think the majority of fans are unhappy about it. That's the only problem here.
Well, you'd have to do a survey, find
I
out.
mean, just judging from reading people's views online, seems like most people are unhappy. They did do a survey. Only 8% of people voted to keep the current badge when we changed the round one. Obviously, leading questions, blah blah blah. But I mean, it's pretty convincing, in my opinion.
All right, let's move on. We've said all we can say on that topic. Should we talk about current Villa rumours? I know we spoke obviously about who we would bring in our previous transfers video, but We haven't really spoken about the likes of Ngonge, Timo Werner, etc. Out of the
Yeah, there's not been
players,
too much going
yeah,
on, has there?
out of the players we've been linked with in the last week or so, who are you looking at as probably the best option to improve our season going forward?
I think to me, based on just based on the players we have actually been linked with, that's quite clearly Somerville for me. I think.
Yeah, no, that's a
Um,
good shout. Him off the left hand
yeah,
side just provides what we have off the right that we never use on the left, and especially if we're playing a game where we are trying to break down a low block, having a Leon Bailey and a Somerville and a Moussa Diaby to come on and change the game, especially obviously Diaby and Bailey can play off the left, but having a dedicated left winger who is rapid, who is going to take on his man, who is going to be direct, just adds another element because we don't have too many players that can play off the left that are like that. I think Zaniolo, while he does try to take on players, it just isn't working. Ramsey, he tends to like to come short. He's a little bit more of a possession retainer. He will, on occasion, take on his man, but he's not that direct. So having him coming off the left, I think, yeah, would make a big difference to our attacking play.
yeah. He just looks quality, and he's got things that he could offer us. And Ramsey's not quite his stride yet. It'd be good to have another option over there. He's good age, etc., etc. I think Ngonge is also a good option. It's just like seems a bit more risky, a bit more of an unknown. So yeah, that's why I think that Ngonge could potentially end up being, as useful as signing as Somerville. If we signed both of them, I could see them both being really effective. But if we're only going to sign one, which you'd imagine we probably are, because they're both kind of attacking players on different sides. But I think we'll probably only sign one kind of attacking midfield winger kind of player. If we are going to sign one, Somerville seems less of an unknown to me than Ngonge. So, but I'd be happy with Ngonge as well. Like, I don't know much about him, but from what I've seen,
Well,
he looks good.
yeah, what I've seen as well is that he actually plays in more of a Moussa Diaby role in terms of what at least what
Yeah,
we
very
use
much
him
so. Yeah,
for. He's Bailey's more coming off that right midfield slot. It tends to be he's a little bit deeper. He's a bit more of a ball progressor and will get in the box. Whereas Diaby's sort of functioning as that sort of false nine drifting out wide, which is more on Gonge's sort of position as well. Um, but the thing is for me, when you've got those two players already, and you're bringing in someone who's about the same age but with far less pedigree, and nowhere near as much of a career to back up, and pretty much the same profile, it just seems silly to me. It's not really bringing in something that you don't have already, and he's not going
yeah.
to
I see what you
be,
mean.
he's not even going to be second in line. He's going to be third or fourth, depending on where you put Bertrand Traore in that mix. Um, so it just doesn't seem like the right signing. He could end up just being a bit of a Chambers. Comes in, looks like he could be useful, but then just kind of gets lost in the squad and ends up being sold on for pennies
Yeah, I see what you
later
mean.
on.
That's what I mean about him being an unknown. Really, is that like Monchi has this reputation of buying cheap players or undervalued players and then them turning out to be brilliant. So I'd absolutely trust their judgment if we signed him. But uh, yeah, he's not immediately. It's not immediately obvious that he's giving us something that we're missing. And while he could turn out to be a really, really brilliant player, because if Monchi's interested in him, then it suggests that he's got something about him in terms of his potential. But yeah, it could just be one of them where he kind of fades into the background and doesn't really become anything, doesn't really offer us anything. So yeah, Somerville out of those. That said, Jonathan David got linked today, and if we are going to
Yes.
sign Jonathan David, would absolutely be the one.
Yeah. I mean, we've been sort of linked with him on and off for probably a year and a half, 2 years now, something like that. And the whole time I've been quite excited about the prospect of that signing, really. If you're going to play a two up top, you want players who can create for each other. And in a David Watkins partnership, I don't know if there's many strikers in the world who embody that more and personify that kind of style more. They're both very creative forwards who are still direct. They're not wingers necessarily that have been converted to forwards. I know Watkins has played on the wing, but he still feels like a very natural striker to me. He doesn't feel like a winger that's misplaced up front,
Yeah,
up top. He
yeah,
feels like a striker that just has the ability to do winger things. And I think Jonathan David is different but very very similar. He's much more of a, if he's in times when he's played in different positions, he's been more of an attacking midfielder, false nine kind of player, and is quite capable of playing on his own up top as well. And I think having that contrast of someone who's typically more used to creating from wide and coming in and is very direct, as well as someone who tends to operate in places nearer the edge of the box, and between the defensive midfield and the centre backs in those little pockets, just provides a nice bit of variation and different options for us. And as well, he's quite young, can take penalties as well, 2-footed. So yeah, it'd be a great investment, I think.
Yeah, it'd be incredible. I mean, honestly, if we sign Jonathan David, I'd be thinking we're upping our chances of a title push immediately, because he comes in, he offers you goals. Like, his goal scoring record is incredible, even though he's not a kind of traditional out and out striker. Yeah, they both have flexibility, which in our system would, they both easily incorporate whoever was playing on the wings. Both Watkins and David could move into the channels, allow the wide players to come central. Like, they could swap positions. They've both just got versatility and flexibility to their game. Yeah, and he's got goals as well. Like, his goal scoring record's just pretty incredible.
I don't think like he'd want game time, but I don't think he'd be like demanding to start straight away as well. I think he'd be relatively happy to be number two to Watkins, because he knows he's going to get more opportunities, I think, in and around that squad, even if he's not starting up front every game.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like, if he's not rotating with Watkins, there's a chance that he plays where Diaby plays, or even out wide. But I can't imagine we'd do that really. But yeah, I think if you're coming into a team that's second in the league or whatever, like, you can't expect to get straight into the team. I think, and he is, like you say, he's quite young still. He's 23, so I think he'd be happy, at least for the remainder of the season, to play a kind of subordinate role. And then yeah, I mean, yeah, it could mean Diaby moving out to the right, but Diaby's been rotated, and there doesn't seem to be an issue there. I think the way that we manage the squad means that even players who are getting rotated still get plenty of game time. It's all dependent on how well you're playing, which is what you want, really. It's just really competitive, and I think competitive top players want that, really. They don't want a nailed down spot. They want there to be good players all around. They want to be competing and making sure that they've got people on their toes, keeping on top of the game. So yeah, I think in terms of how real signing would be, yeah, I think he could come in and be happy with a slightly subordinate role to Watkins.
Yeah, and I think as well, it kind of solves the Duran problem, obviously, in that not just that Duran could then be allowed to go out on loan and he could sort his head out, whatever it is. It's that in those kind of games where we're playing weaker opposition like a Sheffield United, or we're in the Conference League, Emery doesn't quite have the confidence in Duran to give him that start and to give
Yeah,
Watkins the break. Whereas when you've got a Jonathan David, every single one of those games where it's weaker opposition and you think about, we could rotate for this game, you now can rotate for this game with
yeah,
confidence that the player coming in is good enough to perform. And I think that's what he talks about when he's talking about two good players in every position. While I want to see youth players given a chance, if he's going to make that kind of move, bringing in a player like Jonathan David and saying Duran's not good enough yet, I think that's the best way to do it. If you're going to bring in, for example, I don't know, an Iheanacho instead of Duran, while Iheanacho is more proven, he doesn't have much of a long-term future potentially at the club, just because he would be a cheap signing. He's later in his 20s, and unless he, really sets the world alight, he doesn't have that career of excellent performance behind him to say he deserves consistent opportunities long term in the squad. And removing Duran's chances, for example, for the sake of giving them to Iheanacho, it's just like you're investing play time, you're investing the minutes on the pitch into a player where you're probably not going to get much of a return on that in terms of at least sell on or
yeah. And I mean, he wouldn't improve the
transfer.
level that much as well. Like, Jonathan David improves us as a team, whether he's starting or not. If he's starting, he's improving the team. If he's coming off the bench, he's improving the team. Iheanacho, so he's taking minutes off Duran, but he'd be improving us as a team. Iheanacho would come on. he'd maybe play as a sub in some games. He'd maybe start in the league against lower teams in the league, but not necessarily, to be honest. So yeah, like in that case, you're taking minutes off Duran for a player who potentially doesn't really even improve you, so it's not worth it. But yeah, David would be perfect for a player where you'd be confident then sending Duran out on loan.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. There've been whispers of Dybala, but I think that's mostly been from the journalistic side and the pundit side of things rather
yeah,
than from Aston Villa ourselves or from Roma or Dybala himself. But yeah, I mean we've touched on this I think before. I'm not sure if we've done it on the pod, but that would be magic. You know, he'd be perfect for that right-sided false nine role. If you're gonna, for example, rotate him with Diaby and maybe play Bailey and rotate him with McGinn in that right mid role. Yeah, talking about having two great players in each position, Moussa Diaby and Paulo Dybala. That's a big
yeah,
difference from what it
yeah,
was last season.
yeah. I mean, yeah, Dybala would be quality and would be probably the most fun of all the players we've been linked with, just because he's got that like proper bit of magic about him where he can win a game on his own. Um, Incredibly talented, obviously, but yeah, there are concerns about his injury record and things like that. He's not been the most consistent throughout
Yeah,
his career.
I mean he's been
Um,
decent so far this year. If you look at his stats so far in Serie A, 5 goals and 6 assists in 13 matches. That's pretty much
yeah,
exactly
banging.
what you want from that kind of false nine, number 10 kind of role, like semi number 10, semi number 9. That's literally exactly what you want. It's kind of Diaby's numbers, just better. Of course, he's in Serie A, which I don't know if you've seen the interview with Antonio Conte when he was at Chelsea, but he was kind of talking about how the differences between Serie A and the Premier League, and he was like, once in Serie A, once you're a goal or two ahead, you can be pretty confident. Then you're going to see out that game, and you're fine. But in the Premier League,
Right.
he's like, you just never know. You have to be on it to the very last minute because no team's going to give you a break. They're just going to keep coming at you. And so in Serie A, it's probably a little bit easier for him once especially playing for AS Roma. Once they get up a goal or two, other teams maybe aren't pushing as hard as perhaps in the Premier League. So maybe that's an explanation for why Dybala's got better numbers than Diaby, because I think Diaby at this point in his career probably say he's a more useful player than Dybala in the Premier League just because of his pace.
Yeah, he's got the physical aspect. Dybala is one of those players that maybe thrives in a little bit of space. We had the problem with Coutinho where he was really effective in the Premier League 10 years ago, but now he's come back into a Premier League that's changed quite a lot in terms of its physicality. And
Yeah,
yeah, you don't get as much time on the ball as you used to. Maybe Dybala would suffer from that more than Diaby, who's got the kind of physicality and agility, pace to deal with that. Um,
so
but
it
yeah,
wouldn't be
no,
a bad signing. Let's put it that way. And
it'd be a
it's
great signing. I'd
yeah,
be I'd be happy with it. It would be really exciting. But yeah, I think practically there are other players which would be more useful just because like we don't want another Coutinho situation. Not that Dybala would be. I think Dybala's more in the peak of his career and stuff, um, but a little bit more risky. David would be more. I'd be more confident of that working out than a Dybala signing. Um,
financially, I'd say the Dybala signing is obviously less risk though because at Roma he's not going to be on huge wages. I mean, his FB ref will probably tell you what his wages are, but
yeah, I don't
his
know. He's one
release
of those players
clause.
where I could see him commanding a lot of money because he's got like a really big stature in the game.
Well,
But
see what his FB ref says because
I
that's
don't
usually
know.
got pretty
Have a
accurate
look.
contracts. Um, but in terms of his price tag, I think his release clause is only sort of 10, 11 million, something like that. Whereas Jonathan David, you're probably expecting to pay at the 30 at the minimum. You'd probably guess.
Yeah, more. I think Dybala's on 135k according to
Yeah,
FB.
that I mean you'd probably be putting Jonathan David on similar numbers if you sign him.
Yeah, yeah. It's
And
what Diaby's on apparently. So
yeah, it's
yeah,
very affordable for us if we could do it. I like it's a mid-season signing, and financially it's probably less risk than Jonathan David, but there's a higher upside for Jonathan David as he's got more of his career to go, and he
yeah,
can contribute over more seasons. But yeah, someone to come in and push our title hopes forward, Dybala would probably be the best choice, along with someone like further back on the pitch like Ceballos, because they would come in and really elevate the total level of the squad.
Yeah, I mean, we've both talked about maybe midfield or right back being the most important positions for us to improve in January, but we've not really seen much in terms of actual concrete, like,
Yeah,
or
there's
even
not been
rumours
very
really.
very many rumours. I mean,
No.
who have we? I mean, in terms of defenders, I've only seen Ronnie Edwards from Peterborough,
Yeah,
and
and
Frimpong,
Spinazzola today, but that's,
and we
I
know we're
mean,
not getting Frimpong in January at least. So
no.
like it's there's very little rumours unless we're doing one of those things where what we've done previously, where we operate quietly behind the scenes and just sign a player like. And you don't hear about it until like 30 minutes before. It's like, oh, Villa might be
Yeah,
signing
I
this
mean, you
player,
never
and then
know.
30 minutes later, oh, we've signed him for 20 mil. Oh, hey,
Yeah,
Danny Ings, how you doing?
that's the
Um,
dream, isn't it? Imagine we're doing a podcast and then we make a signing during the podcast. That's the absolute
yeah, it
dream
just pops
scenario.
up. It's like, can you imagine right now? It's like pops up. Villa have met Dybala's release clause. I think we,
I mean, when we signed Tielemans, we were in the pub and it came absolutely out of nowhere.
yeah,
There hadn't been
literally,
a
yeah,
single like smidge of a rumor,
yeah, we hadn't linked to
um,
him at all.
and then it just came out of nowhere. So we've got history for it.
We were
But yeah, a little surprising that there's not been any.
we were watching a City game then, weren't we? I think in the
It
pub.
might have been the Champions League final. It probably was because that the season will have ended. So
Yeah,
we got them on a free after the season ended. Yeah, it would have been
yeah,
Champions League final.
yeah. Oh God, yeah. That I can remember that. I just turned to you and I was like, Tielemans, and then I was kind of like, because of his time at Leicester, I was like, yeah, it's a good signing, but my mood quickly was like, maybe, I don't know. And then, but
Yeah,
I
I think
think
I was a lot
you
more
had a lot
excited
more
about it than
faith.
you
Yeah,
were.
you had a lot more faith. And
Because I like obviously when I was at uni in Leicester, they won the FA Cup while I was at uni,
yeah,
and so the whole town was buzzing about it, and he scored that screamer, and so like I obviously I kind of kept an eye on Leicester a bit more when I was at uni there, and Tielemans was like part of that whole romantic Leicester thing that was going on at the time.
yeah,
So yeah, I was really excited about it, but yeah, that one came out of nowhere. So very possible that we just signed someone without any rumors or anything. Because I think it would be surprising if we didn't sign anyone in a right back or DM position. I think we'll probably do one or the other because I think we've got cover for kind of both positions. And like I can't imagine. I mean, most teams don't do a lot in January. Even last year when Emery had just come in and wanted to start shaping the team, he didn't really do much. So
yeah. It's Moreno and Duran.
yeah, like we look like we're signing an attacking player. I
Yeah, we'll definitely
imagine,
get a winger attacking midfielder.
yeah, I could see us signing a winger, a defensive mid, and a right back, but I wouldn't be surprised if we signed one of a defensive mid or a right back, because quite often the defensive mid player can move into right back as well. Like if need be, obviously we've got Konza and Cash there currently, which is rotating really well, which is fine. If need be, Kamara could go at right back, to be honest, for a game or two. So I think we'll probably sign one or the other. So it's surprising we haven't been linked yet, but
Yeah,
I don't know. We'll see.
Jordan Henderson to come and play DM.
Ugh.
I know
Ugh.
we'd have to find a way to cover a
Get out.
portion of his 700k a week, but
Yeah, yeah. God, no, 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 no. Worst case scenario.
yeah,
Um,
he wants to come
I'd,
back,
I'd
but I don't know
boycott
if
the
he's
games
gonna.
he was playing. I just don't want to see him in a Villa shirt. Imagine how it's like when we signed Danny Drinkwater. It was just like I don't want to see that on the pitch. In a Villa top. I don't want it.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean Danny
no,
Ings at first was kind of like, oh, it was a bit
Ings was
like,
Ings was a weird one, but
yeah,
it was like maybe he's still got something in there. But
yeah,
I mean,
because he was kind
Henderson,
of so good in his career, we sort of thought, yeah, he is old, but maybe he's just gonna be great.
there's potential, yeah,
Yeah,
and also he was like a backup signing, I suppose, for Watkins as well. And it's like if he scores as a backup striker, if you get 8, 10 goals out of them, you're happy. Ings was we probably thought was capable of that. Henderson, yeah, wouldn't improve our level. Like he's I don't know what his level is as a player really. He obviously
yeah, it's hard to
at
say when they
Liverpool
go
had
out there,
fallen
isn't
out of
it?
favour, but he still plays for England. Obviously, he only still plays for England because he's Southgate's buddy, really. But still, he's still kind of at a decent level where he can play high level games. But yeah, his wages would be stupid. He's made himself look a right knob going to Saudi Arabia, and I don't think he'd really improve us, to be fair. So
Yeah, I think
Henderson,
the Saudi Arabic gravy train's kind of slowly coming to a stop. We've seen the likes of,
Players now, it's coming. They're all like, "Oh, I
yeah,
want to move back to Europe."
Jota has said the same thing.
Mm,
Henderson. I can't think of all the players off the top of my head. Firmino. And I'm sure there's more that are starting to say it. And so
yeah,
quickly after it all happened, whether I don't know what is the cause of it. Whether they are just unhappy and they're like, shit, I don't want to throw away my career just to earn a load of money. Like, this is my legacy sort of thing. Perhaps that's it. But yeah, it's weird.
yeah. I mean, I think it's got to do with the quality of living out there because it's kind of a culture shock from a European to go to Saudi Arabia because it's just massively different cultures. But you'd think that would be kind of manageable for a year or two for a player at the end of their career. I think maybe
Do you
it's
know what?
likely the quality of the league, really.
Yeah, do you know what I think it could be a bit of an addiction thing, because I think I've heard footballers talk about before, when you walk out onto that pitch with a stadium full of 30 plus thousand fans, like the adrenaline that you get and the feeling you get, it's like almost like an addiction. You just want it
Yeah,
more and more once you've got it. And when we're looking at some of the games that are going on in Saudi Arabia, there's less than 1,000 people in these stadiums. I think I saw one, there was like 31 people or something watching one of the games, and you've got these players being paid millions a month,
God,
and
it's
there's like
crazy.
30 people watching them. I think no matter the
Yeah,
quality of that football and the money you're getting paid, when you've had a taste of the kind of crowds and sort of atmosphere that's on offer in European football, and then you move to that such a contrasting environment, it probably does have a massive impact on your mental
absolutely.
health.
I mean, football's not just well, from a fan's perspective and a player's perspective. Football's not just like the technical ability on the pitch. You know, there's the history of it, the atmosphere of the games, the culture surrounding it, blah blah blah. All that comes into the experience of enjoying football. And yeah, if you're not getting one or a couple of those elements in Saudi Arabia, then you are going to miss it as a player. Like you quite often see players um, go like down to the Championship or go to Premier League sides who are lower in the table, and then players who had been at a really high level end their careers there.
Yeah,
um, but at those clubs, you're not playing in a team at such a high level, but you're still getting that atmosphere. I mean, even if a Premier League player at the end of his career went to League One, you'd still get the kind of culture and history of football. You've still got historic clubs down there. You've still got really passionate fans and stuff. And I think going to Saudi Arabia, especially for a player who feels like they've still got something in them as a footballer as well. Like Firmino, I'm sure feels like he can do a job in the Premier League still.
yeah,
Uh, and if he's walking out to 1,000 people, he's just going to be thinking, I need to be somewhere better than here, really.
yeah. You can imagine the atmosphere, even if there's 10,000 people there, it's not going to be as good because you don't have the football culture. There's probably going to
Exactly, like,
be,
it all comes into it.
a couple thousand of them are sort of, some princes and sheiks or whatever. I don't know the terminology, that are just kind of stood there going, yes, good investment, yeah. And when a goal goes in, they're
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
you're just there
yeah,
like,
exactly.
I'm some kind of dancing monkey for these guys, aren't I? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
So yeah,
I mean,
there's that
yeah,
element.
yeah. You can see why it's happening. I don't have any sympathy for any of these players. Though, really, like I feel like they should have predicted that this is what football in Saudi Arabia was going to be.
Yeah,
So
I think if they quietly negotiate a way out of it, don't have a problem with that. But if they just start crying in the media, I want to go home. It's like you made your own bed, mate. Enjoy the
yeah,
money.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
anyway, on that note, should we make our own beds and get in them? Because I think we've said all we can say.
Because it's 6 p.m. and that's what time I go to sleep.
Yeah, we're old now. But yeah, I think that's a good episode. Bit of chit chat, bit of transfers, some
Yeah,
predictions.
covered some stuff. We'll have a predictions episode this week.
Yeah, yeah. Later this week,
First
Thursday,
one in a
Friday,
while.
something like that. We'll do our Premier League predictions. Won't be too long an episode, that one. Hopefully, we say that every time, but it always is.
We do, but like we've pretty comprehensively covered the fucking Villa badge,
Yeah.
the transfers, blah blah blah. We've kind of done everything in the last two episodes, so we hopefully shouldn't have that much to talk about except the upcoming games in the
Oh,
next one.
one last thing before I do an outro. Finally, through the third round of the FA Cup.
Oh god, yeah, the FA Cup. Yeah, we haven't done that in 7 or 8 years.
God, it's embarrassing, isn't it?
It's really bad. And then the year before that run started, where we didn't get through the third round, we were in the final.
Yeah.
against Arsenal with one of the worst teams in Villa history in the final of the FA Cup. It's like, what the hell is going on?
We were a tournament team, man. That's what it was.
Well,
Counter-attacking, defensive side. It's what
that's a
works.
bit of a stretch.
Yeah,
It's a bit
probably.
of a stretch.
Yeah, but yeah. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this episode and you like or dislike any of our takes, leave a comment down below, like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.